Good day, everyone. This is Sir AJ Aliado, and I'm a senior high school teacher. And for our Earth and Life Science subject today, we will be talking about exogenic processes. So before we start, let's view first our learning competencies. By the end of the lesson, we should be able to describe how rocks undergo weathering and explain how the products of weathering are carried away by erosion and deposited elsewhere. So let's begin. Geological processes. These are the processes that are caused by forces from within the earth are indigenous, while exogenous processes come from the force on or above Earth's surface, such as weathering and erosion. Let's first describe weathering. Weathering is the breaking down of rocks, soils, and minerals as well as artificial materials through contact with the Earth's atmosphere, biota, and waters. Okay? So it's a breaking down of rocks kung saan from a bigger piece, we have a smaller piece until we get what we have, the sands. Ayan. These are a few examples of mountains or land areas where we can see a great picture of weathering. The Grand Canyon and the cliff. So we have a few types of weathering. First is the physical weathering, known as the mechanical weathering. It also refers to the breaking down of rocks without a change in its composition. Remember that when we are talking about physical weathering, it is breaking down o ang pagiging maliit ng rocks, the process of breaking down our rocks nang hindi nababago ang chemical composition ng ating um, rocks. So, at this point, nagkakaroon lang ng change in size and shape but not in the composition. While when we talk about chemical weathering, there is a decomposition of rocks due to the chemical reactions occurring between the minerals in the rocks and environment. In the chemical weathering, there might be a change in the physical properties, the shape and the size, but certainly merong change in the chemical composition of these rocks. Maybe in the outside hanggang makapasok sa loob. But there's a change in the shape, rather the chemical composition of the rock being or nawi-weather. Okay, so now let's move. So these are the physical versus chemical weathering. Physical weathering refers to the disintegration or disaggregation of rocks by physically breaking them apart. So pagpuputol or pagbe-break apart of our rocks, while in a chemical weathering, it refers to the decomposition of rocks and minerals as chemical reactions alter them into new substances. Nagkakaroon ng chemical reaction, thus changing the chemical composition of our rocks. Same as sa physical and mechanical, yung mga shape po niya. For example, in the mechanical or physical, ay still the same rock pero nabawasan yung bandang upper part and there are cracks. While in the chemical, the picture or the image showing the chemical weathering, may mga butas na nangyayari maybe due to acid rain. And later on, we will be learning about the different types. So the process that can cause physical weathering, we have four. We have your thermal and pressure change, winds and waves, freeze and thaw, and organic activity. Let's have first the thermal and pressure change. Rocks crumble and break into fragments because they are subjected to altering hot and cold temperature many times. During the day, when a rock gets hot, it expands, and at night, the rocks get cold, causing contraction. So, just like humans, okay, just like people, when it's hot, di ba? It expands, the rock expands, okay? While kapag malamig, the rock now contracts or nagkukukot siya, nagko-contract ang ating rock. Okay? So, because of that, nagkakaroon ng alteration and later on, magkakaroon na ng breaking of the rock. The next one is the wind and waves. Tiny grains of sand are picked up and carried off by wind, which are blasted on the surface of the rocks, smoothing them. So if you would notice, when there's wind rather, ay meron tayong may nakukuha at may nakukuha siyang sand particles and other kinds. Minsan pa nga pag may bagyo, meron pang kasamang bubong, ayan, pader ng bahay na sumasama during your malakas na hangin, 'di ba? And pag ito'y tumama sa ating mga big rocks, of course, the sand, other particles, it will smoothen or maapektuhan niya ang shape and the size of our rock through time. Siyempre, hindi naman isang biglaan, pero unti-unti po ay magkakaroon ng change in the size and shape of our rock. We also have the waves. On the seashore, the action of the waves chipped away and cracks the rock. That's why, if you would notice, merong mga caves na nabubuo due to the waves. Okay? Merong nagkakaroon ng butas or nagkakaroon ng under yung mga bato, just like what's happening in Anda, Pangasinan. Meron dong umbrella rocks, di ba? And that's due to the waves nangyayari in the seashore. The next one is the freeze and thaw. Water expands when it freezes. That's a fact. When water collects in the rock pores and slits, it expands when it freezes. The freeze creates cracks, and when the ice thaws, the water seeps into the new cracks and causes more cracks and it freezes. Soon, the rock breaks apart. Technically, when explained, this freeze and thaw ay kapag merong umulan, nagkakaroon ng freezing or rather ng collection of water at nag-seep down ito sa ating rock. Of course, meron mga mini cracks pa rin naman ating mga rocks. And then, kapag gabi, especially those in the colder areas, nagkakaroon ng ice or nag-freeze ang water na to at nagiging ice. So, remember na parang ice natin sa mga bahay na nag-expand ito. And because nag-expand siya, so it needs more room, nagkakaroon ng crack yung rock natin unti-unti. And then, while that, yung pagkaka-freeze niya, nagkakaroon ng mga bagong crack. And then afterwards, it will melt down. Of course, nag-daytime na, so magme-melt itong ice natin, nagso-thaw. So, magkakaroon tayo ng seeping down na pupunta naman siya sa mga new cracks. And then, bukas, gagabi, pag lumamig na naman, ay titigas na naman yung tubig natin and then mag-expand na naman siya until mangyayari ito unti-unti until mag-break yung ating rock. Next, we have your organic activity. Weeds and plants grow in cracks. Animal burrows into cracks. Diba? So, if you would notice, if you have a plant box na may malaking puno, tapos nakita mo siya throughout time, sa taon, mapapansin ninyo na merong yung grow ng ating growth ay hindi na naman pababa. It grows din palayo mula dun sa mother plant and nagkakaroon to ng breaking of the rocks and the soil underneath and then pati nga yung pinaka-plant box mo masisira. Okay? And sometimes now, there are also animals who burrows into cracks. Okay? Burrows into cracks or naguhukay sila para may pagtitirahan sila. And also as well, even animals kapag tayo gumagalaw, di ba, maglalakad, merong isang bato na laging natatapakan kapag kayo ay nag-travel or umaalis ng bahay, in time, magbe-break din yung ating mga rocks na ito. Ayan. For example, sa picture na to, yung may malaking bato, makikita dyan sa may bandang gitna na mayroong tayong ugat na of our plant. And on the other side is ginawa na ring bahay ng ating animal ang rock. And we have your anthropogenic activities or the human activities. Ayan, yung nagle-lay down tayo ng mga lupa ng ating mga roads, of course, kailangan para mas madali mapapantay natin and all. Or sometimes we need to get some supplies, rocks, and other particles or materials para sa ating construction. So, nagmamine tayo ng ating mga materials from mountains. Just like what's in the in Manila Bay or Dolomite Bay. Ayan. So, yun po ay nanggaling sa isang mountain kung saan marami ang dolomite and nagkaroon siya na nailipat siya, nagkaroon ng weathering and erosion, di ba? Let's now talk about chemical weathering. There are three processes involved in the chemical weathering, or class rather, of chemical weathering. We have your hydration or hydrolysis, carbonation, and oxidation. Ayan po ang image ng isang statue outside na nauulanan. From 1908, clear pa ang facial features, while in 1969, nabura na ang kanyang features. Ang mga blunt image lang siya of a female. And here's Cleopatra's Needle in New York City, Central Park. Yan, napakalinaw doon sa old picture, while in the new picture, di mo na makikita yung mga cuts niya. And now let's talk about the process of chemical weathering. First is your hydration. Molecules of some substance in rocks chemically combine with water. That's your hydration. Nagko-combine ang H2O into the chemical composition now of the rocks, making now your rocks softer and prone now to your breaking. Okay? While hydrolysis is the chemical reaction of a compound with acidic water. For example, this feldspar now is converted to a clay mineral of kaolinite. So, yung feldspar plus your carbonic acid, nagkakaroon ng chemical change, your kaolinite, and another one to calcite. Here's an example of where hydrolysis happened. Isang statue from a church and na-disintegrate na yung unang ginawa compared now to the original rock formation. Carbonation now is a process in which carbon dioxide bond with other substances. Carbon dioxide in the atmosphere dissolve in droplets of water that make out clouds. These form weak carbonic acid that reacts with certain rocks and minerals. Yan, air plus water is to carbonic acid that happens now in the atmosphere. And pag siya'y umulan, and we have your carbonic acid na napapatak or na umuulan sa ating limestone, nagiging calcium bicarbonate na ang ating limestone, which is now a lot softer than your limestone. Carbonation takes place when carbon dioxide reacts with water or rain, forming a weak carbonic acid. This is the same acid found in your sodas. Okay, sa ating mga soft drinks na tinatawag. The acid is too weak to harm plants and animals, but slowly, it causes now your rocks to decompose. The substances in rocks form a new type and softer of softer substances. Another example would be your stalactite and stalagmite. Parang we are all amazed in how these columns inside caves are formed, but basically it's due to the chemical weathering where yung limestone in these caves are broken down to your stalactite and stalagmites. Stalactite is a mineral formation that has a base on the ceiling of a cave, usually forming roughly conical shape pointing downward, while stalagmite, on the other hand, is a mineral formation that is based on the floor of the cave. Nasa floor ang nanggaling ang pinaka-base nito, and it usually takes a cone shape, same with stalactite, but pointed upward. Another example of your chemical weathering, ang mga butas-butas sa bato, and ang ating mga rock sa gilid ng seashore. Yan. The next process of chemical weathering is oxidation. It occurs when oxygen combines with another substance like minerals in rocks yielding compounds called oxides. When rocks, particularly those containing iron, are exposed to air and water, the iron undergoes oxidation, forming iron oxides or rust. This results in discoloration, weakening the rocks and making it to crumble. So usually, this oxidation happens to your minerals na nagko-contain ng iron. And when it combines now with oxygen, your iron combines now to oxygen, it forms now your oxide na nagiging ginagawang marupok ang ating mga rocks, thus prone to breaking. Just like your Nevada Valley of Fire, di ba napakaganda sa view, but nagkakaroon na ng chemical weathering on this part. To summarize, we have your types of chemical weathering. Oxidation occurs when oxygen combines chemically with minerals. Your hydration occurs when water combines chemically with minerals. Your carbonation when carbon dioxide combines with minerals. And organic decay occurs when acid from decaying organic material dissolves rock minerals. Now let's talk about the second half of weathering and erosion, which is erosion. What is erosion? It is a process by which soil and rock are removed from the Earth's surface by natural processes such as wind or water flow, and then transported and deposited in another location. Involves the movement of weathered rock, now pebbles, sand, or soil, from one place to another by the action of wind, ice, and water, gravity. Erosion is not the same as weathering. Weathering is a process where the rock is broken down or dissolved into smaller pieces or by physical, chemical, or biological weathering processes. So basically, erosion now is a movement of your um, rocks from one place to another. Okay? Being natatransport at pag-deposit ng ating rock. Usually, these rocks now are broken down to smaller pieces such as pebbles, your sand, and even soil. Nang dahil sa hangin, ice, water, and of course, gravity. Erosion versus weathering. So, weathering causes the rocks to break down. Okay? While your erosion ay ang pagbaba or the movement now of your sediments, the broken down rocks to another place. Transported by water. Transport by water. Rainwater is the most important force or agent of erosion. Every day, millions of tons of eroded materials are moved along the river, coast, and deep oceans. Gravity is a driving force. It gives water the energy to erode and carry away rock materials. Um, for the Philippines na laging umuulan, ayan, ay napaka-common nito. We can usually see this in the coastal areas and even in mga uplands natin, 'di ba? Mga highlands natin kung saan pag umulan nagkakaroon ng movement of the rocks from one place to another, from the higher to a lower point, nagkakaroon ng movement. Even nga sa bahay niyo kahit nakatira kayo sa isang kapatagan, ay mayroong movement of your soil due to now to the rain water. Yan. This is an example. Yung mga puno at saka lupa sa taas ng bundok ay na-wash out at bumaba na erode na papunta sa ating low-lying areas. And this one as well. Ayan. Another one, transport, is your transport by wind. Wind continuously blows away loose particles of rocks and soil from place to place. Diba? Especially in desert areas. We have now another is a mass wasting or mass movement. Type of erosion capable of making big changes to a mountain. The variety of downslopes mass movements reflects the diversity of factors that are responsible for the origin. Factors include weathering and erosion, the character and structure of rocks, the removal of vegetation cover, which increase the susceptibility to mass movement by reducing the stability, earthquake tremors, which affects now the slope equilibrium, and lastly, flowing of ground water. Ayan. Types of mass wasting. Some of the major forms of mass wasting are the spontaneous movement of material down the slope in response to gravity. Usually, this happens when we do harmful things to our mountains, kaingin, when we illegal logging or even logging naman. It affects us because na pinuputol natin ang mga puno which holds now the ground together. Once they die, nagkakaroon ng space ang ating mga mountains because magsishrink ang ating mga roots na kumakapit sa soil and thus your flash floods or your mudslides happens. Your rockfall usually happens on Baguio, yung mga lagi natin nababayataan yan, especially here sa northern part of the Philippines. You also have your creep, almost imperceptible downslope movement of soil particles. Napansin natin ito sa mga may pababa and may bumababa talagang mga lupang particles because nga of the movement of water and even air. Tapos we have now your gravity as a force na tumutulong sa kanya. Your bulging subsurface creeps of rock materials, your landslide, multiplicity of downslope movement of bedrock and other debris cause the separation of slope section along a plane of least resistance or slip surface. Yung biglaang pagbagsak ng lupa mula sa highlands. Your slump, separation of mass moving down a curved slip. Earth flow, mudslides, and avalanche. Sometimes we have your rock avalanche in which kapag may bumagsak na rock from a higher place, tapos bumagsak siya sa lower area nito, because of the impact, nagkakaroon ng rock avalanche and of course, nagkakaroon ng landslide. Subsidence is a sinking of mass movement that occurs in relatively rapid fashion. Settlement is a gradual movement. Bumababa ang ating bedrock. Okay? So, ayan, example nito ay nalaglag ang car because of subsidence. Diba? And other movement of our land. Ayan, mga holes natin due to the erosion, or weathering and erosion. Okay, so that's it for our lesson for today. I hope you learned something. If you have questions, don't hesitate to ask. You can put your questions and suggestions on our topic on the comment down below. I hope you learned something. Again, this is Sir AJ Aliado. Hope to see you soon and have a great day, everyone. Bye-bye.